In June 2025, Circle priced its IPO at $31 per share. On its first trading day, the stock opened at $69. Then, within a few weeks, it reached almost $300. If you'd gotten shares at the offer price, you'd more than double your money on the very first day before lunch. Now, here is the part nobody talks about. By early 2026, it had given almost all those gains back, trading in the low 70s. Figma did the same thing, but in reverse order. It was up 250% on day one, and then went on to lose 87% from those highs. So which of these numbers is the real IPO return? The 120% pop on day one on Circle, or the round trip all the way back? That's the question we're going to answer in this video. And the good news is that we don't have to guess anything, because someone has been counting for over 45 years. His name is Ritter. He's a finance professor at the University of Florida, and he's been tracking basically every US IPO since the 1980s. That means thousands of them. He's been tracking first-day returns, 3-year returns, who backed them, how old they were, whether they made money or not. And if you've ever read any article about IPOs, the numbers in it probably came from his spreadsheets. By the way, I'm Ben. I used to work as a trader in a hedge fund before founding my own company. And on this channel, we look at the markets through data, not emotions. So let's go. So let's start by going through what the IPO numbers actually say. And then we're going to talk about what an investor can do with it. There are mainly two findings about IPOs, and both are very well documented. And at first, they look like they cannot both be true. So fact number one. IPOs are underpriced because on average, the stock jumps on day one. In 2025, the average first day pop for IPO'd companies was about 29%. Now, the long run average since the 1980s is more around 19%, which is actually funny because that's exactly how much SpaceX popped on day one, 19%. So if you had the opportunity to buy any IPO at the offer price, you make money on day one on average. And this with reliable consistency. Now, fact number two. Over the next 3 years, IPOs underperformed the market. Ritter's original study found that if you bought a stock at the first day closing price, the day of its IPO, and you held it for 3 years, then you end up with roughly 20% percentage points lower than if you had invested in a basket of similar companies. So basically, which is it? Are IPOs free money because it pops on day one, or is it a trap? The answer is in one detail that almost everyone skips, which is which price you actually pay. That 29% pop that I talked about is measured from the offer price. And the offer price is what institutions pay. That means it's the funds that the bank allocates shares to before trading even happens. And that allocation is the gift. Then the pop on day one is kind of the thank you note. You and me opening our broker app, we can't buy at the offer price. We buy after the stock is already trading on day one. So that means we buy after the pop or during the pop. In other words, we're not collecting the 29%, or at least not all of it. We're mostly the reason it exists. Someone has to buy from the institution that's now sitting on a 29% gain, and that someone is usually the retail investor clicking buy on day one because the ticker is green and because the news is loud. So the underpricing is real, but since most individual investors cannot get access to the underpriced, the number that really matters for investors is the one measured from the price we can actually get. And this one, that's the number that's been negative for over 45 years. What do I mean by that? Well, when you look at IPOs 3 years out, about 2/3 of them are behind the market, and not slightly. Roughly 64% of IPOs are behind the market by more than 10 percentage points over 3 years. So the typical IPO is basically a disappointment. But the average IPO return doesn't look that bad. Why? Because of the winners. Only about 29% of IPOs beat the market. But the top 10 percentile of successful IPOs have a market-adjusted return of 300%. Those are the Nvidias, the Amazon, the Google that drag the whole average up. And this is the thing to internalize. The average IPO return and the typical IPO experience are two very different things. The average is propped up by a few monsters, like Nvidia, as we just said, but the median is a loser. So when you buy a random IPO on day one, you are far more likely to end up in disappointment land than in those very few and rare huge winners. So it's basically a skewed game. Now, the obvious next question is, can a smart individual investor tilt the odds in his or her favor? And it turns out the data gives a few real signals. First, and this is a big one, revenue beats profits. Jay Ritter looked at this directly. And it turns out that companies that come public with less than $100 million in revenue tend to underperform, whether they are profitable or not. On the other hand, companies with real revenue, that means past the $100 million mark, tend to do meaningfully better. So it's not about whether they're actually making money yet, it's more about whether they've proven anyone actually wants their product at scale. A pre-revenue story is a bet on a pitch, whereas a company doing, let's say, $300 million in sales is basically a bet on a business. So an investor could definitely use that as a potential filter when deciding whether to invest in an IPO or not. Second, data says that an investor should be suspicious when everyone else is excited. And Jay Ritter's 1991 paper already flagged it. Companies that IPO in the hottest, highest volume years are the ones that go on to perform the worst. And there is a clear reason for that. Companies aren't dumb about timing. They go public when buyers are most optimistic and valuations are most generous. That's what researchers literally call the window of opportunity. Translation, the market conditions that make an IPO feel exciting are the same conditions that make it overpriced. Third signal, and this one is a more recent one. Companies are going public much older than they used to. The average company now stays private around 11 years before listing on a stock exchange. That's up from about 7 years a decade ago. So by the time an investor can buy the stock, a lot of the explosive early growth has already happened in private markets, captured by VCs and insiders. So we end up buying the back half of the story, not the front. And there is one more piece of timing that almost nobody factors in. The lockup period. When a company goes public, insiders, that means the founders, the employees, the early investors, they usually can't sell their shares for 90 to 180 days. So for the first 3 to 6 months, the float is artificially small. But then when the lockup expires, a wave of insider shares can hit the market, and there's often a lot of selling pressure around that date. So the first few months of trading are kind of a distorted picture. Thin supply, maximum hype, peak attention, and Jay Ritter's own takeaway from all of this is almost boringly practical. He says, just wait. Let the lockup pass. Let 1 or 2 quarters of earnings come out as a public company. Basically, let the hype settle and let the numbers actually do the talking. So if I want to act upon Jay Ritter's findings of 40 years of data on IPOs, I can create an AI agent that will monitor all the IPOs of the last 12 months in the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ of companies doing at least $100 million in revenue. We saw that's a very important filter. And this agent is going to alert me if the stock price of any of these companies goes below the IPO price, on top of having waited 6 months since the IPO date. And it's going to keep monitoring every new IPO from now on that meets these criteria. So I just prompted it, and I'm very curious to see what it will find over the next few days, weeks, and months. Now, let me be honest about what the data does say and doesn't say, because I don't want this to come off as IPO investing is potentially bad. So the biggest winners in market history, it turns out they were once IPOs. $1,000 in Amazon back in 1997 is now worth millions. So the tail is real. In fact, what 40 years of data actually say is know which game you're playing. If an investor buys an IPO on day one because it's green and trending, they're basically paying for the popped price, which is the hardest part of the cycle for a company that is statistically more likely to disappoint than to moon, according to thousands of data points over 40 years. And I don't believe this is smart investing. If active investors want the kind of IPO exposure that makes sense and is backed by data, it kind of has to be pretty unsexy. That means waiting past the lockup periods, favoring companies with real revenue, ideally past $100 million, being extra skeptical when the market is euphoric, and sizing the position properly. Because for any IPO name, it's likely to disappoint. But I know the initial pop is exciting, but the pop is also usually not for the smartest investors. The 3-year number, the one measured from the price most people will actually pay, has basically been telling the same story for over 45 years. But tell me how you think about IPOs. Do you like to getting on day one on the very first trading day? Or do you usually wait for lockup periods to pass or any kind of other signals? I'm very curious to find out. So leave comments and I'll read everything. I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to like it, share it, or subscribe to the channel. As for me, I'll see you in the next one.